Hello everyone. So I'm back Tuesday at 4 p.m. So today's topic is why most Airbnb investors lose money in Colorado. So most Airbnb investors don't lose money because Airbnb is bad, but they lose money because they buy the wrong property with the wrong person in the wrong area and with the wrong assumptions. And that's primarily, I would say, the top four reasons why investors lose money while investing in short-term rentals. So I will be referring to my notes because this is going to be an action-packed, a lot of information that I'm going to share in the next 30 minutes. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop in the comments, and if I'll definitely get back to you after this session, and I always try to answer all the questions. So today I'm going to be talking about these 5 big mistakes I see investors make here in Colorado all the time when they're looking to buy a short-term rental. I would say the biggest one is buying in a non-short-term rental friendly area, overestimating occupancy, underestimating furnishing cost, absolutely ignoring guest experience, and only looking at cash flow. So let's talk about buying a property in a non-short-term rental friendly area. So my thing is that even before you fall in love with the property, the first thing that you need to understand is the property in a STR compliant area. How do you do that? There are so many factors to it that it is very difficult to explain in this 30 minutes. Colorado's Legislative Research Office notes that the STRs are regulated at the county level, but yes, that's one aspect, but zoning, HOAs, covenants, there are so many other factors. There are city rules. So there are so many factors that play here and that you have to be very cognizant about when you're buying a short-term rental. And that's why it's very important that you are working with a realtor who really understands how to navigate this. So what I essentially do for my clients is that once I understand my clients' goals, I would go out and find the right properties that align with your goals in a particular area. So I would be doing all the heavy lifting for you, so you don't need to be getting into these nitty-gritties, and that's why you hired the best person for this job. And any property that I share would be STR compliant, which is in line with your goals, which is in line with your investing goals. So I always say the first mistake is falling in love with the cabin even before checking the rules. So regulations always come first before revenue. And then there are caps and wait lists that also change the value of the property, because in some mountain markets, say for example, the license can be different, but the license can be the difference between a normal home versus a asset producing home, right? In capped markets, you need to know whether licenses are available, whether there is a wait list, whether you can actually transfer the license. And honestly, there are very few counties where you'd be able to transfer the license. Very minimal, at least here in Colorado. So it's important for you to understand when you're investing that the STR permit is just not a paperwork. In some towns, the permit is part of the asset value. Moving on, I also see investors, when underwriting a deal, they are overestimating occupancy. So average occupancy is not your occupancy, to be honest. What is market level averages hide specific differences, right? Like in design, reviews, views, amenities, bedroom count, pricing strategy, and all of these things have an impact. And how are you operating your property will have an impact on your occupancy and overall your revenue. So I would always encourage not to underwrite your property based on the market average and call it a day. Average home gets average results and bad home gets punished. And especially in this competitive market right now, you have to be very careful how are you underwriting your occupancy is about ADR. Sorry, occupancy without ADR is incomplete. What is a property can be 80% occupied and you're saying, hey, I have an awesome occupancy, but that doesn't mean that you are having the right revenue that is in line with your goals, right? You may have a house which has 55% occupancy, but a higher revenue as compared to that 80% occupancy. Think about it. Why would a certain property have a 80% occupancy? And again, you got to understand, when is that property having that 80% occupancy, in what season, in which month, etc., right? Because maybe that property is just rented out cheap, right? They're not doing there is no strategy for revenue optimization on that. Occupancy is often how you are booked, and average daily rate is how much you get paid, right? But revenue is the marriage of both occupancy and ADR. Seasonality is another factor. Seasonality is definitely very real in Colorado. Let's compare a ski town versus a lake town versus a wedding market or a mountain cabin market. All behave very differently. A property that crushes in June through September may have very soft mud seasons or shoulder months. So booking windows and dynamic pricing is another factor. Dynamic pricing is very important. What I also see some investors is that they fix a particular average daily rate for their property and they forget about it. Unfortunately, short-term rental investing doesn't work like that. I highly recommend to focus on revenue optimization by using dynamic pricing strategies and ensuring, because if you're not using dynamic pricing, you would be leaving a lot of money on the table that will have a direct impact on your top line revenue. Underestimating furnishing and design cost, that I would say is another big factor that people underestimate, because you also got to understand that your marketing budget is basically your design costs, right? And you just invest once before you launch the property. So it's very important that your furnishing budget should not be whatever is left after closing. It should be a part of your underwriting before you offer on that particular property. And that's the key. A cheap setup would create weak photos, lower ADR, more complaints from the guests, and more replacement cost. Say, for example, you have a mountain property and you are booked back to back in the season, and unfortunately, you saved money on the furnishing, on the bed, and the bed broke. You would not be able to replace that bed the same day because you're booked back to back. And that will have a direct impact on your reviews, because now the guest who's checking in is definitely unhappy, because that guest is coming with some certain expectation. They have already paid you, and now they'll have to deal with all of this, right? For none of their fault. And once they leave a bad review, that will definitely have an impact on your performance, on the performance of your listing on Airbnb. So something to be careful about. Investing in the right product that you're buying and putting in your property that definitely goes a long way. Design is a must match, and that needs to be in line with your guest avatar. One is, you got to understand what would be your guest avatar, right? Are you going to be catering to family reunions, bachelorette parties, a romantic cabin, a family retreat, a guy's ski trip house? And all your furnishing and design should be in line with your guest avatar, because then you are positioning your property correctly to attract the right guests. And then also it's very important to have the right amenities which is in line with your guest avatar, right? Because if people are coming for a family reunion, probably what are they looking for? They are looking for a nice gourmet kitchen. They would be looking for a full stocked kitchen with everything inside, so that you have guests coming in who would ask, okay, do you have an oven? Do you have aluminum foil, blah? Because why? Because they are booking the cabin for a Thanksgiving weekend where all their family comes in and they are planning to cook for the next 3-4 days, and that's what they want to do. So it's very important that you understand who is your guest avatar, and then design the property along the lines to cater to the needs of your guest avatar, and then provide all those right amenities that your guest avatar would be attracted to. That's why they will be booking the property, and that would be the reason why you would be able to charge premium to the guests, right? So in Colorado, the right amenity can change the category of the property. A hot tub, view deck, a sauna, a EV charger, a fire pit, a pet friendly setup, for example. Ignoring guest experience, I think this is another very key factor where I see properties underperform. They might be a good property in a good location, everything is good, but guest experience really matters, because as a host, you got to understand why would the guest book your property and pay you premium, right? And not book say a Hilton or a Marriott, or say another property, another Airbnb, right? So bad guest experience doesn't start with a bad stay. It actually starts when the guest sees your property on Airbnb, right? So a bad photo, a bad title, an incomplete description, incorrect pricing, bad reviews, long response times, incomplete check-in instructions. These are all which contribute to a bad experience, bad guest experience. So something to really be careful about, because we are in the business of experiential hospitality. Revenue is not just made on Airbnb, revenue is actually protected by operations. So these all factors that I just discussed are something to be careful about. And these are the small moving parts, and these actually contribute to a tight operations, and a tight operation results in a better revenue. Okay, moving on. I am just referring to my notes because I just wanted to cover everything in this 30 minutes and share as much information that I could have. You got to also understand that Colorado guests buy the story. Is that people are coming to Colorado, they're just not buying a bed when they are booking the property, right? They would want to have a nice experience. Like I said, they would want to sip a coffee, early morning coffee by the fire pit, looking at the mountain views, or making s'mores on the fire pit under and stargaze in the night, right? They just want to disconnect. So what is that wow factor that your property is providing? That I think that's really critical here. So it's very important as guests, as host, that you are focusing on these small aspects of hosting. And I also see that most of investors, they're always looking at square footage. So I always tell people that, hey, please understand that we are not selling square footage, right? You are selling the reason to choose your property over 50 others. And that's why that entire experience needs to be wonderful. That gives a wow factor that a guest really, once they see the property on Airbnb for the first time, they feel like, hey, I need to stop scrolling, click on the property, get into the details, and then they get all the information. And that's why I mentioned that the right title, the right amenities, the right photos, the right reviews really contribute towards a tight operation. And small details like, again, are you providing a strong Wi-Fi, say up in the mountain? If your property is pet friendly, are you providing pet station? Are you providing all the amenities for the pets? Is there a clear checkout process? Is there a fire pit available? Is there a local guidebook that you're providing? Because people may be coming in from different cities and they just want to explore all the nearby attraction. During summers, people come in the mountains, they want to go mountain biking, they want to go hiking, they want to climb 14ers, play disc golf, say, for example. So, and they may be just looking out for what are the nearby places where they can go to eat. Are there any karaoke sessions happening near the property? There's so many things. So as much information that you can provide about your property, and not only about your property, on how for your guests to operate and maneuver in the property while they are staying, but also in and around about that area, I think that would be contributing to a very tight operations, right? Then this is big. Thinking cash flow. Cash flow is definitely important, but it is not the whole return. Small investors are not only looking at cash flow, they are looking at appreciation, they are looking at tax strategy, they are looking at how much can they use the property for themselves, debt pay down, what is that exit value, the scarcity of STR eligibility. So, and I see that I also come across the situation where people are missing out on good deals because they are just looking at monthly cash flow and they are ignoring the bigger investment picture, and they're not really understanding what are the tax implications and what are the benefits that they can get by really working with a cost segregation specialist, their CPA, and then coming up with a holistic plan with your investment.